how vital is it to take back control of that particular base that has been attacked and then counterattacked now by rebels?
Actually, it's a demonstration of the force. The rebels did it in an unexpected way. And
the counterattack was unexpected?
For the air base, I guess. And what we see in the situation there, now we do not know actually who did those attacks from the very first hand. And there are certain groups who claim it, but the targets under the Russian bombardment now, like Ahrar or like Tahrir, still they did not claim the attack, and still we have some question marks on the perpetrators of the event.
Now, we've had, obviously, the president of Turkey today make a phone call to Vladimir Putin. We had Mevlut Çavuşoğlu yesterday making the same point. Are those concerns of Turkey going to be listened to by Russia and Iran? And if not, what can actually be done to try and make sure that those de-escalation zones are adhered to?
Right now, what we see in Idlib and in other de-escalation zones, in eastern Ghouta and in Idlib, we see the ongoing conflict. And now, especially the Syrian forces, the regime forces, seem like they do not try to commit to the agreements done in Sochi and in Astana process. Rather, we see that the regime forces are escalating the conflict there by continuous attacks with very heavy civilian casualties.
I mean, it's worth remembering that there are, observation posts. This was a deal that was agreed quite forcefully between Russia, Iran and Turkey to make sure that they could de-escalate the conflict. What other pressure, other than a phone call from President Erdogan to President Putin, can be put on to make sure they adhere to that agreement?
Actually, the great leverage here is lying with the Russian pressure and the Russian leverage on the Syrian affair. If the Assad forces, if the regime forces are going on with these attacks, the only plausible explanation is that there is some green light for them flashing from the Russian side, perhaps. A decisive end for this ongoing regime attacks against the rebel forces, whether moderate or not moderate, like terrorist groups in Idlib and in other parts of the country, is that the Russia can put the real pressure on that if they want to. But the problem is, now Idlib is the last pocket, the last stronghold of the rebel forces. And before going to a political solution, I guess Assad forces will want to get a decisive military solution so that they can have the upper hand in the negotiation table.
And I guess one of the main complicating factors in this is the definition of what is a moderate fighting group and what is a terrorist group. And obviously the Russians and the Syrians and the Turks have different opinions on some certain groups, and that must complicate matters.
It's really a complicated matter. Conceptually, the word terrorism is really complicated, but beyond that, the realities on the ground are really complicated. Because we see some stakeholders in Idlib, in other parts, some moderate, some not. But the problem is each country, each regional power names different groups under different titles. And this is also a very useful opportunity for Bashar al Assad, because this way, by utilizing these complications on the definition of the act and the groups, he can easily manipulate and just call the entire rebellion forces under this title of terrorism. And this makes him advantages in terms of showing his role as the only legitimate rule in Syria and just delegitimizing the rest of the rebel forces, same as ISIS, Daesh, or whatever name you give them. And the main problem there, actually, such a discourse, such a fuzzy discourse, is helping the regime forces to commit very severe human rights violations in Idlib, in eastern Ghouta, and in other parts of the country.